I know everybody out there is currently loving the new Resident Evil game, but I just have to come in here and say it does not in any way capture the spirit of the previous games. At no point does a beefy guy punch a boulder in a volcano or fight a dinosaur in China. And thank God for that.
Hello everyone and welcome to Game Room, the show on this channel where I just geek out about video games, and there are few games out there that I geek out harder for than Resident Evil. I'm something of a horror junkie, and these games threw me into a world where I got tense at every single sound, afraid that I'd see something jumping out at me every time I turned a corner, but there was also a dash of action in there. I mean, as spooky as the game is, at the end of the day, you're still shooting a giant with a rocket launcher, so, you know. But as the franchise went along, it had to make a choice. Stick with the horror element, or amp up the action to create something new with every installment. They decided to go in the direction of action, and sure, in Resident Evil 4, they found that perfect balance. And then they lost their goddamn minds. Starting with Resident Evil 5, they looked to the movies that everyone had criticized for not being anything like the games, and, well, just not being very good at all in general, and said, hey, people love these. Let's make the games more like that. Don't get me wrong, Resident Evil 5 was still a good game. It just wasn't a Resident Evil game. As opposed to Resident Evil 6, which wasn't anything. Yeah, that game was, oh boy. Listen, I don't want to just rag on this game all day, so I'll just sum up my feelings for it by saying that when the memes about your title card are the best thing about your game, that's not a good sign. And don't even get me started with Umbrella Corps. I played this thinking it would make for a good rant review. I didn't even get an hour into it before I had to hang it up. So now, once again, Capcom is faced with a choice. Keep going down the action hole because it was the easy answer, or boil up a pot of coffee, get themselves the Alec Baldwin speech from Glengarry Glen Ross ready, and rebuild this franchise from the ground up and return it to what it was always meant to be. And Capcom decided to just release a bunch of HD re-releases for like several years in a row. Capcom, seriously, make some goddamn games already. Or at least make an HD re-release of Rival Schools and Power Stone. I will also accept that as an answer. But then, when they were done with the re-releases, they hit the bricks, broke Resident Evil down, and took it back to its roots with Resident Evil 7. And I know this is the point where I should say, but did it work? And then keep you in suspense, but screw that noise, this game is amazing. This game is already a strong competitor for my favorite game of the year, and it's only February. Unless it takes me forever to get this review done, in which case it's only March. This game stars Ethan, a man whose wife was thought dead 3 years ago, but suddenly he gets a mysterious email from her saying that she's at the Baker's estate down in Louisiana. He drives down there and finds that it's not a smart idea to go digging through rotting mold-covered mansions in the deep south. Seriously, did he even try to call the cops first? I mean, I get it, it's your wife, you're excited to get her back, but I literally sat down with my wife after playing this and we both agreed immediately without a thought. If one of us was thought dead for 3 years and suddenly we got a mysterious vague email, we'd call the cops, the FBI, the National Guard, the Boy Scouts, hell, even just make a post on Facebook about it saying, if I'm not back in a week, I'm probably dead in this house. But yes, Ethan finds his wife is now acting possessed and trying to kill him, and it just gets worse from there as a regenerating family who is basically the Umbrella version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre family have trapped him inside this house, and now he has to find a way out of here, a cure for his wife, and answers to what the heck is going on. Now, let's start by addressing the big appeal of this game, which is that it really does feel like they sat down and said, we need to go back to our roots. And I don't just mean they're going back to a mansion, I mean this is going back to survival horror. In fact, this feels like they time traveled back to when the first Resident Evil was made and they said, okay, do we lean more towards horror or towards action? And they decided to go down the path less traveled because yes, the previous Resident Evil games were frightening, but a lot of those scares were jump scares and they were brought on by camera angles built specifically to hide the monsters. Here, the horror comes from tension. it comes from the atmosphere. It comes from constructing levels that actually force you into terrifying situations. There are so many moments when I would have to just stop playing and sit there to center myself. Not because something big and spooky popped out at me, but just because something didn't jump out at me. Just because the level made me think something was going to jump out at me and I kept constantly freaking out about it. And whenever there was a jump scare, something appearing out of nowhere just to spook me, again, it was just there to raise the tension for later on. It was there to make me ask, what the hell is up with this freaking family? And a lot of these scares come from the house itself. Now, I'll admit I have a bit of a personal connection with this big spooky mansion simply because I actually grew up in an old 2-story house way out in the middle of the woods. I don't mean, oh, my house was a bit out of the way. No, I mean, it was my house, then a mile of dirt road through the woods, then you got to the main road, then you had to drive 2 miles before you finally got to anybody else, and even then, it was just a guy selling melons out of the back of a truck. I'm not kidding you, that's literally where I grew up. I bring this up because one of the things that I loved about this mansion so much is how it felt real. Aside from the crazy death traps, it felt like a spooky old house that you'd actually find in the middle of the woods, and I'm saying that from first-hand experience. So for anybody out there who might play this game and say, who would actually live in a place like this? It's unrealistic. It would be too freaky. I would, no it's not, and yes it was. And they amp up the survival part of the survival horror element as well. I'll admit, I never really had trouble with ammo. Only about 2 or 3 times in the game did I have to think, oh crap, I'm getting low. But I still had trouble with health and with finding space in my inventory for all of this, which honestly was probably the most effective psychological attack in this whole game. It constantly gives you this feeling that, oh crap, I'm going to need this item later, only to make you realize that if you want to hold on to it, you have to get rid of something else you will probably need now. But in the end, I found that this game did an amazing job giving me just enough supplies to keep me thinking about this at all times. You can tell that they tested this out over and over again to make sure it worked just how they wanted it to. In fact, you want to know how well they planned out all of your resources in this game? Okay, minor, teeny tiny spoiler, like super small, nothing story related, but I want to give you fair warning anyways. In the Resident Evil games, the Magnum is the most powerful weapon in the game. And in this game, if you find a ton of collectibles, you can trade them in for 1 Magnum with 1 bullet in it. Then, if you complete some side quests and look in the right places, you will find 6 other Magnum bullets, giving you a total of 7 in the entire game. That's all, only 7 Magnum shots in this game. And when it comes time to face the final boss, they soak up tons of damage from all of your weapons. Except the Magnum. Want to know how many shots it takes from the Magnum to finish the final boss? 7. Exactly 7 Magnum bullets. Speaking as someone who grew up with that mindset that you should save your best items for the final boss, that was genius game design to me. Now, I've been praising this game pretty heavily, but it does have a few problems, so let's go ahead and get into a couple of the negatives. Now, as you've probably heard, a lot of this game is you running from the hillbilly version of Nemesis, as the father, Jack Baker, can't be killed and he will just pop up from time to time to try and kill you. And yeah, that part is great. It forces you to try and figure out how to use your ammo to stall him without unloading it all. And I actually really like some of the boss fights in here. They range from hilariously freaky to nightmare fuel. However, the other monsters, the ones who make up 90% of the combat in this game, yeah, they're not the best. They're pretty freaky when they first appear, but there's only about 4 varieties of them, and you're just going to run into each of them over and over and over again. And while it freaked me out the first few times I saw them, after a while they just became frustrating. They just became another thing that I had to deal with. Also, one thing that I always loved about the Resident Evil series is that the protagonists always felt very memorable. They always left an impression on you. Ethan, on the other hand, is meant to be a faceless protagonist, and I mean that literally. You never see his face, you never get any backstory on him, and he has almost no interactions with other characters and very little dialogue. Honestly, he is kind of a non-existent character, so while I indeed will remember this game, I won't remember Ethan. But despite those problems, this game still succeeded on so many levels. But the best thing about it isn't just how scary it is, it isn't how tense it kept you at all times, it's not how well the levels were designed, it's not even that the whole game is a giant love letter to The Evil Dead, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And I'm not kidding you, seriously, count all the references they make in here to that movie. It's everywhere. The best thing about this game is how it gets you thinking. Everybody saw that trailer and said, oh, they looked at PT and said they're going to copy that, and yes, that is indeed true. But you know what other game you can find inspiration from in here? Five Nights at Freddy's. Because if you just play through this game, then yes, you will get a story. And it's a solid story with an amazing twist in the gameplay halfway through that blew my mind. But if you pick up all the notes that you find here, you get a whole new level to this story. I'm not kidding you. You remember Lisa Trevor from the Resident Evil remake? Yeah, you remember how you got her whole origin story through the notes? Yeah, this makes that look like random scribblings. It's like this game looked over at Five Nights at Freddy's and said, wait, people are going nuts for stories that unfold through hidden notes? Well, why did we stop doing that? We're Resident Evil, damn it, we invented that! I was coming up with crazy theories every step of the way all throughout this. Every little note hints at ties back to the original game, to the origin of these characters, to what the heck the ending really means, and I was loving it. As someone who loves to brainstorm crazy headcanons and theories, this game was a dream come true. In fact, I even recorded a little post-game reaction to this where I just ramble off all my crazy theories. It's in no logical order, I don't even know if it makes sense, but that's what this game will do to you. It will load your head with so many theories and so many questions that you just have to get it out of you. You just have to go full stream of consciousness. So in the end, I salute you, Resident Evil 7. I salute you for reviving this franchise, for bringing back what I loved, but at the same time making it feel new, for making me want to keep playing no matter how many times I had to stop because I was getting too scared, and because of that, I give this game 9 out of 10 clips of me freaking the fudge out. Kool-Aid Man. God damn it! Oh, shit. Oh, God!
Oh,
Oh,
hello.
Oh, why'd I do this? Why'd I do this?
Oh, there's Granny.
Oh.
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 She's gonna be behind me when I turn around. I know it. Here it comes.
Oh.
Oh my god.
Thanks everyone for tuning into this review, and if you liked it and you want to see more, then remember that we cover comics, games, and movies every single week on this channel, so hit that subscribe button. But also, did you know that I have a Let's Play channel? No? Well, that's probably because I almost never do anything with it. Yeah, I'll admit, that's my bad. It's kind of just there in a glass case for me to break open whenever I need to talk about a game, but for Resident Evil 7, I played through the whole thing, and you can watch me do it by clicking on that button right there. But, thanks again for watching everyone, and make sure that you come back next time.